Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having a great day today. Today we're taking a look at the first book of the Castle Brass trilogy that stars my favorite version of the Eternal Champion, Dorian Hawkmoon, by Michael Moorcock in his multiverse. It's the first book of that trilogy. And it's the fifth book in the series. The first series set of 4 books that I've reviewed for and gone back and reread for this channel is fun stuff, and it's set in a post-apocalyptic future fantasy with some science and some fantasy and some stuff like that, in a cool place in Earth. So that's pretty cool. It makes it a lot different and so forth. So the first book is 4 books long. So it's not a trilogy, but a quadrilogy. I loved it. I've read it a few times. It's also where I say you should start reading the Eternal Champion, since it seems like it's much more easier. It's less dark and so forth than some of the other stuff. His most famous version of the Eternal Champion, Michael Moorcock's, is probably Elric of Nebenay. He wrote a ton of books and things for. It's pretty cool. And so forth. So what's happening in the Eternal Champion series is that this is in a multiverse of planes that all have battles between law and chaos. And this stuff was created in the 50s, 60s, and it was heavily published in the 60s and 70s, decades ago. So it's pretty cool. And this big giant law versus chaos, and there's this key figure that appears on every plane called the Eternal Champion. That's fighting the fight for law against chaos. And so that's the central conflict for you folks. And that's what's happening here. So basically what's happening here at the beginning of book 5 in the first book, Count Brass, of the Castle Brass series, is that it's been 5 years since the end the rough victory at the end of book 4. And now what's happening is that about 5 years into it, he now is married to his lady love. They have a couple of kids that are fun stuff. She's now the Countess Brass, after her father, Count Brass. And then Michael Moorcock's key Eternal Champion, Dorian Hawkmoon, isn't really that interested in playing. He's really more interested in being a father and just sort of enjoying retirement and so forth that he earned with his battle royal stuff. So he's not really interested in being, Count Brass. And his people go to her anyway, more often than not, and they see their son and firstborn as sort of the next dark incarnation of Count Brass. He's very similar to him physically, with red hair. Anyway, so that's kind of cool. And then about 3 chapters in, we're going to find out that there is a ghost of Count Brass that's been appearing in this small land called the Camargue, and then it is telling people that Dorian Hawkmoon killed him at the Battle of Londrin, telling him to come and fight Count Brass out in the swamps of the Camargue to get justice against Count Brass, so that Count Brass can get his vengeance. And so that starts finding out and so forth. So then he's going to go out and find out what's actually happening. It actually is Count Brass, but he's from like 20 years ago, and so forth. And so then Count Brass, which is what the book's named after, and then several of their friends from previous adventures that also died in the Battle of Londra are also here too. And then they are all going to set out on an adventure to find out what's actually happening. So that's it. That's the sort of, and that's like 4 or 5 chapters in. So I'll leave you there. Again, I keep my review spoiler free. I typically only give spoilers for the first few chapters. So that's what's happening in that place for you folks. This Eternal Champion series was heavily influential on modern fantasy, particularly through its creation of the law versus chaos dichotomy, which is also continued in other things like Roger Zelazny's his Lords of Chaos things for you folks, which has a law versus chaos central thing, and the chaos people there are the antagonists in his Chronicles of Amber. Then you also have it in other things that came along. Also, the first game in the Dungeons & Dragons series that creates the first role-playing game, it's in the created by TSR in the 70s, also has as its central conflict law versus chaos. It's not until a few days later with the advanced Dungeons & Dragons that the good versus evil is laid over top this central conflict of law versus chaos. So that's pretty true for the early Dungeons & Dragons game too. Also, by the way, in 1979, in the Dungeon Master's Guide for that first edition, the co-creator, Gary Gygax, in Appendix N lists Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion series is one of the key influences where he got a lot of his inspiration from. And you can definitely see it. For example, one of the swords, the Stormbringer of Elric, is definitely literally a sword that's lifted into the game, and so forth. So you can definitely see his stuff heavily influential on modern fantasy and stuff is heavily read. And Elric was the big hit and key character that many people go back to and read. It's pretty dark. That's why I say start with Dorian Hawkmoon. So there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read the 5th book, Count Brass, in the Dorian Hawkmoon series? If so, what did you think about it? Let's talk about it in the comments below. I'm giving this probably about a 7.5 out of 10. Some of the stuff books I give an 8 to, and some of his books I've given 7s or 6 to. This one's really more like in the middle. So for you folks, I'm giving this a 7.5 out of 10. But if you disagree or you agree, tell me in the comments below. If you want to talk about the ending or whatever, let's do it. If you enjoyed this, why not hit that subscribe button? There's going to be a lot more of these to follow. Also, as a reminder, the name of this channel is The Worst Thing About New Books, a quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about new books was that it kept us from reading the old ones. And an old book like this, decades ago, is definitely a key thing that we sometimes forget to read in our rush for the new stuff. So there you are. Go ahead and leave you to it. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day, investing it, and watching my video. I just want to thank you again for taking some time out of your day. It's so humbling. Have a great day.